everyone, and welcome back to another episode of OHKO, a Pokemon VGC podcast. The 2025 season has officially begun, with Baltimore Regionals just wrapping up, and Joe Brown is officially back. Sierra, Joe Brown here. Joe Brown, you missed out on Baltimore. You missed out on last week's podcast, but you aren't missing out on life. You had a cruise that year?
Yep, it feels good to be back. I went on a cruise with my family, so my immediate family and some relatives. It was a big group of us. The cruise was planned for a while, so unfortunately, it ended up being the exact same weekend as Baltimore, which is a bummer because I definitely would have drove down to Baltimore since it's so close. But I had a great time. We went to the Bahamas. That was my first time in the Bahamas. I bought a watch that was cool. Had a lot of fun on the boats. Every night I met some Canadian people. They were lovely. They were very good at karaoke, by the way. Every night in the karaoke bar, they were out there crushing karaoke songs. So I give the Canadian people some credit for their karaoke skills. But yeah, it was. I was intermittently seeing notifications and stuff while I was on the cruise, but I didn't have Wi-Fi to respond. So I was somewhat understanding things that were going on. But the Sunday morning when I got back, turned my internet back on, tried to catch up on everything, and saw that Wolf was undefeated after day one. It was definitely an exciting time in Baltimore.
Yeah, so much to be talking about with Baltimore. So, like I said, the 2025 season has officially begun, with Baltimore being the first stop. And going into this as well, this was the new regulation. I feel like on the podcast, we have talked so much about Regulation H. We had our little preview with us two a couple weeks back, and then leading up to Baltimore, me, Joseph Vigarte, and Brady Smith as well, really just kind of diving into the format. And honestly, I've not really enjoyed playing the format too much as of yet. Maybe I just haven't found the right team. Maybe I'm just going up against the worst teams. That's giving me just a bad taste of absolutely everything. Because there is those teams out there. You're talking about, Wolf Glick undefeated on day one. I would not enjoy going up against this Toad School team. But I think overall, for a broadcast sense of view, and even just the plain perspective, that Regulation H at Baltimore turned out pretty well.
Yeah, I think there's always something inherently exciting about a new format and a new regulation because it is the first time that we're seeing something, right? And even if it was, you paired a popular Pokemon with Fluttermane in Regulation B, and then you paired Fluttermane with Chi-Yu in Regulation C, even if you knew it was going to be popular, it's still exciting to actually physically see it for the first time. And so when you have moments that are truly off the wall and out of nowhere, like a Scyther on stream, and Illumise in top 16, and Mousehold without Annihilate winning the regional from Nicholas's first regional event, there are a lot of stories that the beginning of new regulations, they can really establish how the rest of the format's going to feel. Remember Regulation F with Alex Underhill winning Portland, and how cool it was that he had five priority Pokemon on his team there. So in that kind of set the stage for the rest of the regulation. So I think we are hopefully we're headed off to a good start for Regulation H.
It'll be interesting because, and I think people who are on the sense of, I like unique Pokemon being used, will absolutely love this one. But things kind of seemed all over the place. When I look at these teams and what was viable and what could work, there's some common trends of Pokemon, right? Your Incineroar is doing a pretty okay, 6 out of the top 8. Rillaboom, a little bit of fraud when it goes to top 8 conversion, but when you're looking at cut conversion and day 2 conversion, doing pretty good. There is a lot of different things that were viable, which I think I'd be intrigued to see if that's going to be the same case once we get to Louisville, or if it will start to become kind of a little bit more centered as we get more into the nitty gritty of it, since this was just the first event. But I know you were gone. Did you get a chance once you were back to catch up on any of the broadcasts? Did you tune in on Championship Sunday?
Yes, I did. I checked out Championship Sunday. I watched all of the day 2 matches in preparation for the pod. because I was still traveling like as the regional was going on, so I didn't get to catch it live. We got to watch the VOD of it, and like the matches were really really interesting. Like there was a lot of back and forth, a lot of game threes, which we always hope for from broadcast perspective, but like different storylines, right? Like Riley in top 16, Paul Chua still chugging away, trying to get that 7th regional title to get closer to Wolf, right? Coming up short yet again, just like Toronto last season. Like there was a lot of really cool storylines like that. Of course, Tolar Webb winning a regional last season and making the making top 4 this time around. I did see the what was the play? I think it was in top 8. Like of all the matches I watched, there was a play where they knocked off and I think they knocked off and slept the Ursaluna on the same turn it swapped in or something. I forget which player
was
did that.
like knocking off the flame orb on the swap in
Yes.
so it couldn't get guts?
Yeah. And that was really cool. I think that was probably the coolest play, besides all the Mousehold stuff, which we're certainly going to get into. But overall, from just what I saw on day 2, I don't know. I'll have to go back and watch the day 1 matches because I heard they were hype. Like I said, there was a site there that popped up. But the day 2 matches lived up to the expectation.
All right. Do we want to talk about the day 2 matches first? Do we want to talk broadcast first? Or do we want to talk about our Baltimore champion and first Worlds invitee first?
Oh my God, that's such a tough decision.
I know there's so much to talk about.
See, like what was funny with the cruise is like I've only been on this is only my 2nd cruise ever. Like so my family, they're the cruise people. I was a passenger princess on the cruise this weekend. Like I would hope
that you're a passenger princess and not like driving the ship.
No, but like I was just in the room. I was told, all right, dinner's at this time. We're going to this floor. We're going to here. Like I was just vibing with it. So I haven't really been making decisions lately, so I'll leave the decision in your hand. You're the decision maker.
It's about due time for you to make a decision.
All right, what was the podcast? What are you talking about?
The choices, I said broadcast.
Oh, broadcast. Okay, let's do broadcast. Sorry, I thought you said podcast.
Broadcast. Yeah. Okay. So you tuned in for day 2. Did you see? So there's a couple of different things to talk about, but I think when we're talking about broadcast, my biggest impression of things, did you get to see the cut in between segments of the Dweez fun facts?
I saw one of them as they cut to break. I forget what joke he said, but it was just like really funny. I think Dwee did a great job this weekend. I hope he was great in that host role. I hope he can, if he hosts again, he can like even further flourish that. Like he had the whole "you had to be there" bit and everything. Yeah. Like I thought from what I saw from Dwee, I think he did a phenomenal job as host.
Oh, 100%. So the first iteration of the fun facts, it wasn't that each one of these, and anyone who watched the day 1 broadcast would know this, it wasn't that they were recorded separately and put separately. He did like a 3-minute long segment where he just sat there reading the fun facts with a straight face. And as someone who loves this type of dry humor and loves Dwee, I thought it was hilarious. And it was so funny to see the mixed bag that is Twitch chat, because like, the humor doesn't land with everyone, right? I thought it was the most hilarious thing. I think Dwee's a genius. It was so funny. And others were like, what? And then they cut up all of the facts from there, and then we're interlaying them through the broadcast from then on out as like the funniest little like transition. And I want to do more of that so bad. Yeah. I'd have to pick a different style. I'd have to pick a different thing. But like that, the fact that there was something he did that was like multiple points, is so good.
Yeah, that's really good. That's like it's promising for the future of the season, right? Because we're always trying to think of new segments, keep people entertained between rounds and different bits we can do. But like it shows off Dwee's personality very well, so that's great from a broadcast perspective. You're showing off the personalities of your talent, but it's also filling downtime and making people entertained. Like they want to see what the next bit is going to be. They're continually being entertained, and like I guess you're gonna if you have to host a regional at some point this season, Sierra, you're gonna have to raise the bar, because we started it pretty high.
I don't know. Also, if I did know, I couldn't say it, but I don't know when I'll be hosting next. But I have a genius segment planned up, and I'm not gonna spoil it for anyone.
Okay.
But it is inspired by Dwee, and it's genius. It's also a little LCS inspired. So if you've ever seen the LCS monologues, this might be something that's a little familiar for you. But yeah, it'll be great. It's like it'll be great. It's like a mix of that and then like between like what do we did, but it'll be good.
Yeah, and then just general broadcast stuff. I believe her name. I feel like I tell her name's Emily, right? The new
Oh yeah,
TCG
new
caster.
TCG caster. Yeah,
Yep.
Emily.
So I watched a couple of rounds of TCG. As those who know,
A new
Rahul,
caster in our midst.
right? Rahul Reddy, one of my best friends, he was TCG player. He is a TCG player, and he was on stream. So I watched a couple of the VOD rounds, and congratulations to Emily joining the team.
Yeah.
Thought her and Jeremy did a great job on those rounds that I watched. So it's always nice to add new names to the group.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like one of those like if there's too many people, it's like, ugh, but like they needed another voice. So definitely glad that she joined. But for VG, we were running with the same crew, and all of them crushed it throughout the weekend, which is awesome. I'm so sad I couldn't be there because there's always going to be the FOMO for the events. Don't get me wrong. You're watching, you're just like, man, they're doing so good, and I want to be there in the midst of like all doing good, and like they all crushed it, and they had some phenomenal matchups. Talking about some of the stuff that we've seen on stream, like you said that you watched the day two, right? Day two had some of the best stuff. Like earlier, day one, like, we had a couple 2-0s, a couple of like lackluster matches, and that was when I was worried that Regulation H was going to be like this big scam.
Big
And then
matchup
we started
roulette.
getting like, yeah, and then we started getting better matches as we got later on in the day. And then day two, I think, was like almost all bangers.
Yeah, I think that is something that how did you like when a format is so hyper offensive, and we haven't fully realized the format yet, right? Of course, we have a million Victory Road tournaments and online, Tommy Tuesdays and all the great online events that help develop the metagame and give people experience to practice for the live events, but like they're not necessarily recreating the same atmosphere as a live event. So it doesn't matter how many online events you've seen Arch Aladon, Basque Legion, Pelipper win, that you have to actually see it in practice in person first before you see it. Like how many times you get frustrated in Tommy Tuesdays when you lose to Torkoal, or after you eruption from Torkoal Lilligant, like you have to see, does it work in a real tournament setting? And I think a lot of those, I don't want to, those divisive archetypes, I think they ended up to not be faulty. I think they ended up to be true, that they are viable strategies in this regulation.
It's like
there's 4 Ursa Luna in top 8. Like that's kind of a big deal.
It's what's really funny about the Ursa Luna P2. I don't think we really talked about it last week on the podcast, the one that I had with Ugarte and Smith. I have written down in my podcast notes, because we were discussing, and mid-podcast, I was like, Nil Dunlop's team from EUIC, minus obviously the banned Pokemon. Why isn't this going to be good? And I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget, but I didn't talk about it. Nil's team was that's Ursa Luna with the P2 and like a lot of the similar tools as what we got to see pop up in Baltimore. I've written it down. I just didn't say it because I was like, I'm going to give this to Ugarte in case like this is something so he could work on it for like Louisville or next event. And then it ended up just going off at Baltimore. So I could have been a genius. I could have been the genius talking about this Golden Go, this P2, and this Ursa Luna, and I didn't. But I'm really not surprised to see that taking off. I mean, when in a format that has these restricteds and all of these strong Pokemon that were nice complementary pieces but didn't dictate how this ran, I don't think it's really surprising to see a couple of those pieces take away and the core of the team still functioning.
Yeah, because some things are inherently viable, right? Like a sun boosted eruption user, regardless of if it's Hisuian, Typhlosion, or somebody else, like another strong or Torkoal or something else, like a Swift Swim abuser, if it's Basque Legion, or if it's another restricted Pokemon or something. Like the role, the archetype that's being filled is still a valuable and viable aspect of team building, regardless if it's Basque Legion or not. So sure, you make Urshifu, Urshifu is banned, so it can't be your Rain abuser anymore. So now you gotta go down to Archaladon and Basque Legion and other things. But like people are still filling in, like now you don't have let's say, Calyrex Ice Rider as your Trick Room setter. So now people are using like Delphox and other other options for Trick Room. So, but you still need a Trick Room setter on the team, right? If you're running a slow archetype. So it's just
P2 had a good weekend.
Right, like the names and faces might change based off of which Pokemon are legal or not, but they're still filling the same. They're still filling the same roles. And then some of the Pokemon are the exact same, like Amoonguss and Incineroar, being on both of the first and second team.
And some things just don't change. As much as sometimes we would will it. The fact that we had talked about last week, potentially Incineroar being a fraud. That's what you missed on last week's podcast.
Well, I'm glad I wasn't here because I would not have stood for that type of defamatory statement. When are we going to learn?
Yeah, honestly. I mean, okay, we'll talk about usage before we get into results-based thing, though. But it's...
Yeah.
When we're talking about the usage, I don't think something that we talk about enough is specifically how many are in cut or in top 8. Specifically this year, we do have to look at cut as well, because they did do the changes into having an extended cut, asymmetrical, dependent on the lowest place record that has made it into top 8. So when we are then including that in our scope, Incineroar wasn't top of the usage. Like, people will get very quick to look at the usage and be like, oh, this is a fraud because they didn't pop off. It wasn't top usage. Day 2, Golden Go was top usage at 41%. Incineroar was at 26%. That doesn't tell the story of how many Incineroars were in top 8, which is, well,
6?
Majority.
I think
70.
There's 6 Incineroar Amoonguss teams in top 8.
Yeah, like it doesn't, like the usage doesn't spell that, which Golden Go also did have a really, really strong top 8. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the 8 teams. And like this isn't even looking at cut because we had 21 teams in cut, and frankly, I cannot be bothered to count that like low down.
21 was the cutoff. Jesus.
Yeah. So there's stuff to talk about there. But yeah, Incineroar, even if it was at 24% usage, where it did end up placing, with that all being said and done, was realistically really high over a couple of these other Pokemon that overtook it in the usage stats.
Yeah, I think there's some things that stand out, right? Like, one, yes, Archaludon Rain technically won the event. Shout outs to Nicholas, right? But it's the only Archaludon team in top 8. The next highest finishing is Ethan's Archaludon in 11th place. So it's not like it. Yes, the winner dominated the event, certainly, but it's not like the archetype dominated, where there's 6 Incineroar, 5 Amoonguss, 5 Golden Go, 5 Porygon, 4 Ursaluna. Like, those are the things that I would look at and see, like, did these Pokemon dominate? For example, another thing, just the steel typing straight up. I remember one of the first conversations I had off the boat, looking back, was that the trifecta of steel types that Lorsey kind of made a tweet that was like, if you're not running one of these 3 steel types, you're trolling. And then other people are like, oh, those Pokemon aren't even going to win. And like, Lorsey got to have a little victory lap because obviously they were good. But I think we did the math, and on day 2, if I look at the stats between King Gambit, Archaludon, and Golden Go, I can't. I don't want to do math on the broadcast, so I'd have to look it up in Discord. It was like 94% of day 2 players, or of the day 2 field, represented those 3 steel types. So
wow.
So that means, so obviously it's not a 1-for-1 because there could be a team that has 2 steel types on it, right? So I don't want to say 94% of players had it, because some people might have doubled up, but like, it just shows the usage of a valuable steel type in this format, which is crazy too, because of the lack of fairies. I kind of don't understand why we need such strong steel types, since like Primarine is the only fairy.
Let me explain it to you. So you see, when Pokemon had reached the point at which they had hundreds of Pokemon, and they wanted to make a really special one for the 1000th place, they just said, take a pile of gold and that's it. And they made him a steel type, and now it's a problem for the rest of us to deal with. I mean, some of the steel types that they have in game, some of these tools, I mean, Duraludon was, like, any Pokemon that has, like, pretty good defenses in the first place, pretty good typing, and then all of a sudden has stamina and body press, it's going to be good. Something that has a move that in the most popular weather that we have instantly just damages and gets special attack boost, it's going to be strong. Golden Go and everything that encapsulates that, it's going to be strong. Like, I don't even think it's a still typing into the meta or anything. It's just like there's some severely busted steel typings that we have here right now.
Well, and it
Again,
would
everyone else's problem.
The King Gambit would be the
Gambit's good.
counter to it, right? So that is probably why 36% of day 2 players had King Gambit compared to 41% on the Golden Go. One, because of all the intimidators. It's not just Incineroar. There's both versions of Tauros that are good at intimidating. In theory, you could see somebody using either version of Arcanine. I think the highest finishing one was like 21st. There was a Hisuian Arcanine, but basically there's a lot of Intimidate around. So King Gambit is like good into Intimidate with Defiant, and also it just completely walls Make It Rain Shadow Ball on the Golden Go on the other side. And I agree with you. It is a problem because I was just streaming right before we were recording, and I was using a rental team, and it was just like some Volcarona, Clefable, Rillaboom, so Golden Go like balance team, right? And like I don't know what I've been doing for the last 2 years because I never got 1,000 coins. I only like touch traded for my Golden Go just to get it registered. So like I don't have a Golden Go of my own. I have not used this Pokemon. He was surviving every hit. He was like one-shotting things that were neutral with my Choice Specs Make It Rain. Like it, I kind of feel like I should have been using Golden Go a little bit more.
I'm glad you finally figured out what the rest of us knew after 2 seasons of Pokemon. Like, what are you on now?
He was outspeeding everything in its tier as well. Like it was kind of cracked, honestly.
Again, what have you been doing the last 2 years? I don't
I've
like
been
using Golden
Armor
Go.
Rouge.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's actually true. Spam players only know one thing, and that is Spam. Spam is life. No, like, it is a strong Pokemon. And then bringing up King Gambit as well, like, having, like, a Black Glasses, Terra Dark Sucker Punch, and just, like, that sort of priority in the format is insane. Like, I feel like we saw a decent amount of, like, priority strong Pokemon this weekend. And it's funny because last formats we've seen very punishing things for that. Like Fergraph, and we didn't really get to see that this weekend.
Oh, that's true. There wasn't Fergraph. There wasn't Serena. Right? You can have... I would imagine Serena would be better now that there's no legendaries around. Like, if you're using Serena on Kyogre teams, like, with legendaries running around, like, the BSTs are lower now. I feel like you could use it for, to
no
protect
Fake
some
Out,
of
no
your team.
Sucker Punch, no Grassy Glide, like...
Yeah,
no
I wonder.
D-Night-Easty?
I do.
Curious.
Well, I will say, by the way, I'm a little sad. Shout out to my friend Tommy Cooling, 79th. He was the highest placing Armarouge, was 79. There was like 5 Delphox that finished higher, so that's a little brutal for me personally.
How does it feel that your boy Armors is washed and it's all about Delphox now?
Well, I saw the team rental that world champion Ryota. I think it was Ryota's team that he posted online, and the people started running with it and playing it in tours and stuff. And I guess it makes sense. Excuse me. One, it's way faster than Armarouge, so you have some faster options for the non-Trick Room turns with Hisuian, Lilligant, Delphox, and your Gallade. And even in DD female is really not that slow of a Pokemon. You just don't ever invest in its speed. So it's a little bit of a mid-tier Pokemon. So I understand that the Expanding Force, it might have a higher special attack. So I can... This is what's cool about Regulation H is this is a format where you could conceivably use Delphox where you can't use it in, some of the it's like, why would you use Delphox if Heatran is real? Why would you use Delphox if, Lunala is real? I'm just trying to think of something with its typing, right? So, with similar typing. So, I think that is cool. Even if it means Armarouge is worse, it's cool that Delphox is viable.
It's interesting. This format has led to a decent chunk of Pokemon that you wouldn't necessarily know the viability beforehand. Like in top 8, for example, if we're talking about Pokemon, first off, Alolan Ninetales, like it's kind of just there's other stronger things. We haven't really seen Snow as an archetype too much. Paul wasn't really running into the Snow mode, but did have Alolan Ninetales on his team. So Alolan Ninetales, congratulations on your top 8. two Flamigos making their
Mm.
way onto top 8 as well, with Toller and Chris Hahn running the same team. They had credited Yotam for like the team building and team ideas and stuff. So two Flamigos. Then, out of all things, we have the Vivian. The Vivian. We're in a
Yeah,
format where Vivian.
Z's Vivian, yeah. An actual
Yeah.
bug type rage powder user instead of Among Us cosplaying as a bug type.
Yeah, like we're in a format where like we're seeing all these different things. And then once we get out of top 8, but still in cut, I mean, you talk about the 9th place team, Toad Scroll.
Yeah.
We've gone to Toad Scroll here, Joe Brown. You missed Toad
I
Scroll.
did miss Toad Scroll, but I saw the TikTok edit that Wolf posted with all like the hardcore music.
I missed the TikTok edit.
It's really funny because he says like 10 toes in now, and like 10 Toad Scrolls, all the feet and stuff. Yeah, that team is wild. He was undefeated. Like I said, it was funny that both Wolf and Rahul are from Virginia, right? And so like the Virginia kids in their local regional were 17-0 after day one because Wolf was 8-0 and Rahul was 9-0. So I guess they had the home field advantage there. But
yeah,
this Toad Screw, like, was it on stream? Did it actually pop off on stream? I understand the concept.
Yeah.
Glaring, wheezing, neutralizing gas turns off mycelium mite, which is like the worst ability known to man. So then Toad Screw can start sporing quicker.
Yeah, so we got to see both Karis and Wolf using the Toad School team. I think Toad School in general, maybe just because I was distracted playing games at the same time I was watching. I think the Toad School aspect was a little bit, at least in Karis's game, because I watched that one a little bit more closely. When he did bring Toad School, he didn't bring it in game 1, and when he did bring it in game 2, it was literally D-Knight, Terrafly, Terrablast, like Toad Scroll gone. Like that thing's cooked. So we didn't really get to see that aspect of it. And I don't have the memory to really remember like how much we got to see from Wolf. But I don't know. It's an interesting Pokemon. I know there's a lot of conversations too about pairing it with Weezing, specifically when you're looking at the speeding of all of a sudden the Spore, all of this other stuff. But it's fun seeing that these Pokemon that we've never really used that you can all of a sudden try and make a team out of because the power level's lower.
Dude, like I love the both Tauros survival, like not the mono fighting one, but the Aqua breed and the Blaze breed. Like it's so good. It's so fast. Close combat is good on any Pokemon that you put it on, right? You have Stab Water or Stab Fire, depending on what you want. You can even go Will-O-Wisp if you want on the Fire version. Like I love that these Pokemon are viable now. The Flamigos also make sense as well. We were saying preseason here before Baltimore was that the Hisuian Decidueye was like just the anti what's his face Golden Go Pokemon. Well, Flamigo is also anti Golden Go because he has scrappy close combat and he's significantly faster than Hisuian Decidueye. So I think Toller and Chris made the right decision there. You also have the Brave Birds for all the Amoonguss and Annihilates running around that are weak to flying. So I do think the one Pokemon that the one that's grown that we talked about the last time I was on, and that from my experience on stream just now and just like watching is like Clefable's a stud, Sierra. I don't know how. I know only one got top 8, but this Mon is like, I know what the Signals people have been saying for 15 years now. It's finally true in VGC. Clefable is a star as a support Pokemon. I was literally on stream. The ones that I was using had Skill Swap as the 4th move, and I Skill Swap Prankster away from Grimmsnarl. So I had Prankster Skill Swaps on my team to like just like keep switching the ability around. Like, oh, it was I Prankster Skill Swapped away Solar Power from a Charizard in the sun. Like, so my Clefable lived on like 15 HP, stole Solar Power, and then killed itself because the Solar Power did 10% at the end of the turn, which was a
I
good
don't know if
switch.
you're helping prove the GOAT status that you're trying to give
No,
Clefable.
it was good because I needed Clefable to get off the field so I could get the next Pokemon out. So he knocked himself out from Solar Power because
you guys heard it here first. The best part of Clefable is when it dies.
No,
when it's done, when it's off the field.
Let me tell you, Prankster Clefable kind of slaps. When you see a Grimmsnarl on the other end, you just thank you, take it away.
Oh my goodness. I mean, Clefable is definitely like going into this event, it was very specific archetypes in Pokemon you needed to make sure you had an answer into. And Dondozo was public enemy number one. And Clefable is definitely one of those answers to it. It was Clefable was one of the answers. Any Haze user, specifically why like pre-Marina being a Haze user, we got to see a lot of that. And that sort of thing. So to see Clefable as well as pre-Marina start getting some results was pretty good. And I mean, there was only one Dondozo there in top 8.
That's true. It's on Lorenzo's team. Then also in the I looked it up, the Victory Road Challenge or Tour right before Baltimore was actually won by an Italian player, Francesco Piopero, with Dondozo without Tatsugiri. So wonder
Solidozo.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe as the season progresses, maybe we'll do some solo dozo strats. But overall, I'm trying to think if there were other Pokemon that we were hyped about going into. Like, there's two Annihilate in top 8, but neither of them are paired with the Mousehold. And I think that's the big takeaway here from how the top performing Annihilates, and then of course Nicholas's team with Mousehold, kind of making a household name. Mousehold making a household name. Oh God, I'm good, Sierra. Making a name for itself with those two population bomb knockouts. That, like, I'm finally happy. It only took 2 years, but people finally realized you don't have to put Annihilate on a team if you want to run Mousehold. You can just use a normal type that can redirect Shadow Ball and has Friend Guard. Like, it's a good Pokemon. It does not have to be stuck with Annihilate. I'm very happy we finally learned that.
Let's start talking about this final, because I have thoughts. So there's like the double approach to it. So I want to say first off, before we get into the team and anything else, for Nicholas, like, huge congratulations. I believe he did attend NAIC, but this was his first regional, and to win it all, I've heard that he's like very familiar with like draft leagues, so like proficiency in playing Pokemon isn't new, but like for VGC still newer, and winning, amazing. I have conflicted feelings as someone who has not liked this format due to Pelipper or Chaladon, and then has hated Mouse. I've hated Mousehold since Reg A. Like, I don't like this guessing game of like, am I about to get population bombed? Is this about to be like all of a sudden one of my Pokemon cooked? And the finals was so funny because of the population bombs, which is also where I have the conflicted feelings, because like as a general rule, I don't like Mousehold, I don't like population bomb. Seeing the population bombs and everyone in the audience like calling out every hit was hilarious. Like, it was so funny. I'd be so frustrated playing that match, but as a spectator, that part was pretty funny.
And Nicholas's version with the Mousehold was Wide Lens Technician, which makes sense. Technician, you want to do more damage on your 10 hits, and Wide Lens, you effectively get a 99% accurate population bomb, which you only have the 1% chance. But if you miss that 1%, God, that's
he would have been cooked in the finals if he had hit that 1%.
But it makes sense that he has it on the team because he already has support in Amoonguss and Incineroar, so he doesn't need the Friend Guard out of Mousehold. Terra Grass is there as another pseudo Amoonguss answer, so that you don't get put to sleep and stuff. But I think it was also funny one of the earlier rounds on day 2 that he was streamed where he max stamina boosted his Archaladon to the.
That was an earlier match. That was finals.
That was finals. I thought
that was finals too. No. That was game 2. That was game 2 of finals.
Okay,
he literally pop bombed that.
Maybe he did it twice, and I'm misremembering. But like, I remember Aaron was actually screaming. He was like, "Okay, you can miss now, Mousehold." Like after the 6 defense.
Yeah, that was game 2 of finals.
Yeah, that was so cool because like beat up can only get you 4 boosts if you use Whimsicott or Mousehold with beat up, right? But population bomb, that could get you all 6 and then some.
Yeah, it popped off. It absolutely popped off. So that was pretty fun to follow. Like I said, I not the biggest Mousehold fan, but hey, like sometimes you don't need to overcomplicate it. Sometimes it literally is just a population bomb, KO your opponent,
super fast
Pokemon. Done. Like, I think in VGC we overcomplicate things sometimes, and I think Nicholas was just very much to the straightforward approach of like, hey, like, why don't I do this? Plus, did you see Nicholas tweet his team with the EVs?
Yeah.
And, like, originally, like, yeah. And
Because
like it
people are
was
like, there's no way this mid attack mouse old OHKO, Dragonite, blah, 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 blah,
yeah.
blah. And he was like, oh, my
But
bad. I brought the wrong
like the
one.
reasoning too was like oh well, the bulk wasn't helping me live anything, so I just did max attack because like YOLO, which won him the finals, which is a crazy reasoning. No, mad respect to that. Like some people overcomplicate like the stats and stuff too, and he's like, oh well, this stuff is like either killing or isn't killing, so we'll just put it in attack and it worked out.
Right.
Like that was everything.
Everybody like overanalyzed. Okay, we're gonna put 36 EVs and HP in precisely 44. Boom. He's like, whatever. He's gonna die anyway. I'll just give him max attack.
And like that was everything in finals. That was, oh my goodness, that was so funny. Like it was great. Did you see his interview after too?
No, I didn't get to watch the interview because I just wanted to
Okay.
watch the matches and get caught
Okay,
up.
for you as well as anyone interested, I tweeted about it. It is earlier than my tweet about the fact I finally got Slitherwing, by the way.
Nice.
Yeah, I got a Slitherwing. No big deal. But no, back about Nicholas. He after the interview, Dwee's like talking about like, oh, are you excited for the world championships? Like all this stuff. You competing? He's like, yeah, like I was gonna go to spectate, but it'd be pretty cool to compete, I guess. Like you're just like, what? Like he already just like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm not competing at Worlds, I'll be spectating. Like that was the mentality going into it, and then he just wins the regional, like so humble. Like that was so funny.
Yeah, that's awesome. Then now he can pick and choose throughout the rest of the season. Doesn't have to be in that top 75 race anymore because he's already one of the X amount that automatically have an invite.
Well, thankfully, like, because my biggest curiosity is like if he was just like expecting to be spectating Worlds, if it was like I don't plan on attending many events, or it was like a doubt on his own skill. So if anybody follows us on Twitter, you'll have seen that we've reached out, and Nicholas did agree to be appearing on the podcast for next week for interviewing. So I will be asking that. That is my biggest question of things. We'll reiterate this again at the end of the episode, but if you have any questions for Nicholas, drop them in the question of the week Discord. We'll make sure to ask them because there is a lot that we can talk about for that.
Yeah, and then we had a whole bunch of robots on X who thought they got rid of those robots, but they all were just copy paste replying with Sierra's message for their own podcast, which I thought was really funny.
Messed up, by the way. I am just but a podcast.
Hey, we got there. We got there. We got Nicholas next week. That's all that matters. We're good.
I'm just trying to secure the guest. I am just trying, put in this work, and then everyone's like, let's clown Sierra in the grind. That's it. Like, what?
No, you gotta respect the grind. You can't clown the grind.
Joke's on them. Nicholas agreed to be on the podcast, but like,
exactly.
But like, no, it was cool, and like, big congratulations to Paul too. I know for Paul, he's very seasoned regional champion. Being able to take another one would have been like fantastic for him. But with how big the events are nowadays, and for a new regulation, like second place, like still absolutely crazy, and with a Lowland Ninetales.
Yeah, so that was one thing I wanted to bring up. Is I was actually talking with some friends, and don't want to name drop, but I have some good friends at this game. They're very smart, and I was like, yo, Alone with Ninetales. Ever since it came out, I've always loved its utility. I think it's phenomenal. Aurora Veil, arguably the best move in the game because you set up light screen and reflect at the same time. And this team that Paul Chu, maybe it's the jersey in both of us. Maybe it's the fact that we went to the same high school, but many years apart. But we got great minds think alike here, Sierra, because I was building an Alolan Ninetales team. I have proof of it. I built an Alolan Ninetales Bax Caliber team, so that's A9 Dragon, which Paul Chua has Dragon on his team. I had Incineroar, Amoonguss, and King Gambit on the team as well. So, like, at least I'm on to something. Maybe I can't execute it as well as Paul Chua, clearly one of the greatest players of all time. But like my brain, the cogs are churning in the proper direction. I'm gonna get to a spot where I could like play in a regional, play in a GC, play in a local, play in an MSS. Well, they're not called MSS anymore. Like and pop off because the team building processes are working out right now.
See, I have a team currently built that has an Alola Ninetales as well. It's my first Reg H team. Um, but it's quite different. I have Alola Ninetales, Empoleon, Hydreigon, Annihilate, Rillaboom, and Mousehold. But I was Mousehold. I got the
Hey, you
Ninetales.
got yeah, you got there. You figured
I'm
it out.
cooking.
Well,
But
just to me, like, yeah, and Paul understands it too. I haven't talked to him, but like the double dragon, obviously the weakness is ice types, right? But there's not a lot of ice types in the format. It's just not a lot of viable. Articuno's not legal anymore. So
yeah.
there's not a lot of ice types. And then the other part is that there's not a lot of viable fairy types out there. So if you if you're just taking, sure, maybe Make It Rain is strong, or like Choice Specs Shadow Ball is strong, but if it's behind Aurora Veil and it's not super effective, like your dragons are able to stick on the field and do massive amounts of damage behind the Aurora Veil. So I think it just makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's definitely a good concept. I'd be curious too if it's built on a little bit more for like our next event with Louisville. But looking at the other top 8 teams we have, I mean, we have our first place team, our Charlotte, our Pelipper, our Mousehold. Second place, we got our Ninetales, Garchomp, Gambit. And then we go Guts Ursaluna P2, Guts Ursaluna P2, Guts Ursaluna P2. Like,
yeah,
it really showed up this weekend.
Yeah, 4 of the top 8 teams, and then Z Casio was the only P2 and cut that did not have Ursaluna on the team. So that means Ursaluna Blood Moon, which was the one that people were, crying to their moms about and at home about how busted it was in this format. I'm scrolling, Sierra. I'm looking. 21st, Andrew Jenkins, the top finishing Ursaluna, only one in the asymmetrical cut round of Ursaluna Blood Moon. So even with all the intimidates and everything going around in the world, people still prefer the OG Ursaluna compared to Blood Moon. It looks like.
I feel like that can't stand. I feel I'd have to look more into the format to like base this off of like, putting some facts and logic here with that. But I think for a lot of events, it's just kind of what the players value going into it and make for the call. And I guess just this one wasn't necessarily it. But I think the fact that you can't have like the flame orb knocked off, the fact that you can go into battle and instantly put out the pressure, I think that there's a lot of things that it offers that maybe wasn't respected to full effect. So I feel like even if it didn't have the highest placement here, that maybe we see that more for Louisville. Because like I don't see why having like the same concept of like here is our tailwind, so the Blood Moon Ursa can go fast, or it can actually do decently well in Trick Room. Like I don't see why that same concept doesn't exist now, other than the players didn't feel like it for this event.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we forget about, like, where our minds get pigeonholed, right? Like, Mousehold can only be Friend Guard Follow Me, like, and even the Technician version had Follow Me on it, but like, it can only be Annihilate's friend. People are like, well, Ursaluna can only attack once the Flame Orb is activated. It's like, it just gets in people's heads. But like, no, Ursaluna's got pretty damn good stats before the Flame Orb activating. And we saw multiple times on stream, people just clicking, it's like just like normal attacks before the flame orb boost, getting damage, like clicking a non-boosted headlong rush or earthquake. It's like, it's still a lot of damage. It's not OHKO damage once you get to the flame orb activating on it with the guts ability. But like, there were many times that we saw non-boosted Ursalunas on that first turn click earthquake or headlong rush, taking advantage of their opponents, expecting them to be passive and automatically protecting to activate the boost.
Sometimes it's just that little bit of chip that makes a difference. Like, that is 100% for sure. But I think, like, it's definitely one of those ones where if you kind of let out dry, it's a little riskier. Like, you can get the Flame Orb knocked off. It can take a lot of damage, a lot of other stuff that it's, like, I can see why getting in, like, the normal thing of, like, a protected first term might be a little bit more useful. But looking through the results and teams, is there anything else you want to call it? I mean, you were talking about the Illumise, but I regret to inform you that the bug weird Pokemon was actually a Volbeat at 14th, which is the first off highest ever placing Volbeat. They do essentially the same thing. I think technically Illumise is technically better because it has a lower attack, less damage from foul play or confusion. Other than that, they're identical. It's just that in this case, Alex now has the honor of being like, I have the highest placing Volbeat, since Illumise did do well at Vancouver 23. for 24.
Like when you look at the team, it is cool that the Volbeat has both Sunny Day and Rain Dance. So with Prankster, Tailwind, Sunny Day, Rain Dance, Encore. You have Sunny Day for your Hisuian Typhlosion or Rain Dance for your Electroshot Arch Aladon, right? Like I think it makes it makes a lot of sense that this Volbeat is very well rounded. Like instead of choosing a quote unquote better prankster Pokemon that's better at certain things, he's like, I just want to be okay in multiple aspects that can get me through. Like the Espathra was putting in work, you know, like this team. The one thing I'm still not sold on is Primarina. I understand it's one of the few Haze users and one of the few fairy types in the format, but like I'm just not a Primarina guy. I'm sorry. I apologize to Justin Tang. He was using the Primarina out here, but like 25% of day one, 24% of day two. Like it's so slow. Like I understand it's Haze, so maybe you just have a 5-mon team and then you face Dondozo and you bring it. But like I'm just not a Primarina believer until somebody, you know, proves it right to me.
We're just starved for water types out here.
Well, it's the fairy typing we're starved for, right? Because water types, we got Pelipper, Basculegion, you know, some other, I guess, other stuff. But Liquid Voice is good for water too. It's a spread Hyper Voice, spread water attack is really hard to deal with. Also, I think we forgot to mention this, Sierra. Or I forgot. It's in my brain. I brought it up and then didn't bring it. The Flamigo also has Wide Guard, so on Tolar's team. So it's anti Golden Go, it's anti spread move, right? It's like it's anti grass and anti fighting. Like I think it's just a really strong individual Pokemon. So that was the big surprise because I really wasn't expecting to see Flamigo, especially without the Co-Star ability, right? You usually see those silly strats where the Tatsugiri knocks itself out, and then you have Co-Star, Flamigo next to Dondozo, but no, just straight up scrappy, close combat Golden Go right to his Cheeseman face.
Cheeseman face. Yes, I mean, okay, looking through this.
Sneasler?
Breloom. Oh, I hate Sneasler.
Justin Tang also tweeted about Sneasler, and he used
it. I hate Sneasler. What can I say?
Why?
I got 4-0'd with Dire Claw, Helping Hand in a match.
It'd be like that.
Yeah, so it was unfortunately like that, and I've never recovered. But like, yeah, that did show up during the weekend.
Okay, wait. So let's move on here, Sierra, because we're kind of we gotta move on here. So as I see Andrew Jenkins in 21st place, that's the final 9-2. So there were 21 people that made top cut. Is that how we're gonna call it with this asymmetrical cut, or are we gonna wait until it gets like? How did that seems like a lot to me.
I mean, it's a round less of Swiss, so it's like you're cutting Swiss to then have the bigger cut, which it's like there was definitely I know Rajan posted a thread about how one more round of Swiss could really fix up how like the Swiss is and the cut and all that. That aside, I do like the fact that when we're looking at an actual cut, that it's very clear, cut and dry, no bubble. It's if you've made this record, you have made it in. Like I do appreciate that aspect of it a lot. And anyone who is newer to the circuit, it was literally just a top 8 cut before, and it was down to resistance. And it was, I mean, in this case, if you were at a 9-2 record, there was only 9-2 records that would have been in the top 8, if I'm counting correct. And there was in total like 17 people, I think, at 9-2. It's a bad hour for math, but like that being said, a very small fraction of people at the record that would make top cut would actually make top cut because of the old system.
Right. This is now 2 events in a row that Wolf has started undefeated and been a victim of the asymmetrical cut, right? Because at Worlds, he lost that asymmetrical round, and here he lost this one.
The one thing with that, though, because, like, people can blame the asymmetrical cut for that, or, like, whatever. I think falling victim to that when you're at a higher record is unfortunate. So in Wolf's case, being at the 10-1 once he made that asymmetrical cut is unfortunate. I think for a lot of people, considering, again, the majority of people would be at that 9-2 that are playing, that round of Swiss that you would have versus that extra round of cut that you would have while you're getting to a more symmetrical cut, it's essentially the same thing. Because if it was just an extra round of Swiss and you lost that, you would have been out of contention anyway. So I think it's a little damned if you do, damned if you don't. But I think the unfortunate aspects of someone losing at that higher record is worth it for having more people at a correct record playing, because I think the resistance system as it is very unfortunate. Like, I've seen people whiff out of cut after going for near flawless records because then they get down paired twice, which ruins their resistance. They had a fantastic record before that happened, and then they get down paired twice, back to back games. And if they didn't get down paired, they would have been cut. How is that their fault at that point? Like, there's a lot of different pain points when you're kind of looking at the system, and either way it exists.
Yeah. No, I mean, I understand. But yeah, also, if I didn't get crit, I would have won, and then I went to this. There's a lot of ifs in Pokemon. It's something we're gonna have to get used to. I will just personally state it is very jarring to see 21 people making cut, and I'm not doing it air quotes in a disrespectful way. It's just like, it's a new terminology, a new world that we're in. That it's like old people having to learn how to use like smartphones. That's me right now. I'm just gonna have to get used to 21 person cuts because that's just the world we live in now.
Well, as we move on from talking about the event itself, because it is late, and we were talking about keeping this episode around an hour. Something else that we did want to talk about, when we talk about changes going into this year, was registration in general. This has been the topic since Baltimore wrapped up, as well as the fact that LASE registrations went live. But last year, up to a certain point, if you registered for an event, you could get refunded for 30%. For everything except for 30%. So I guess 70% of what you paid, and then the spot would open up to somebody else. And now they're doing no refunds at all. And whether it's they're not opening the spots up or whether people are just not canceling because it doesn't matter, people can't get spots. So if you do not sign up for the event in the first minute, because these events sell out instantly,
yep,
you all of a sudden cannot go to an event now that's planned for a month or two after the registration.
Yeah, I think this is just bizarre. It's another, I know a lot of things in life, sometimes changes are made for the sake of making changes. It feels like in life, and many people have jobs out there that they can definitely understand to what I'm expressing right now, right? Sometimes decisions are made because they want to make new decisions, and this one just doesn't. It just doesn't make sense if you just think 5 seconds about it. There was nothing wrong. People were willing to take the 30% cut. Not only one, to save some of their money if they can't make an event, but two, as Gio has mentioned, other people mentioned on Twitter, to also reopen the slot to someone else who is willing and able to go to the event. So you're insulting and hurting the players that might have a death in the family or something comes up. You're insulting them, and you're insulting the other players that are grasping, they're dying to go to the event, and their internet was 5 milliseconds slower than everyone else's internet when they tried to register, and they're no longer eligible. Like, this seems like it should be an easy fix. I don't know if it will be, but with the amount of conversations in both VGC and TCG happening about this problem right now, I have faith that it will be remedied at some point this season.
I really hope so. I mean, my biggest gripe with the fact that the game is growing is not because the game's growing, it's that it's been unable to scale, like, the operations wise with the growth of the game. Understandably, it was an explosive growth. Like, you all of a sudden can't triple the venue size and then still have these same organizers with all of this equipment. Like, it logistically doesn't make sense. So already we're at a point where more people want to play the game than can play the game, which was already an issue even when people were refunding registrations. There is still people would get spots, and there is still extra people that wanted to play and couldn't. So we've already had that issue. So for the change to then come out that, like, no refunds and, like, we're not opening spots, is just crazy. I think Gio said that there was 70 spots that were unused at
Yep.
Baltimore. I know multiple people every single day were on that site refreshing. They're playing Valorant. They have that registration and their side monitor and they're clicking. They're going nuts. And if the organizer's taken like a 30% like processing off of the refund and then open it up for someone else to take, they're only profiting. So like
You're making
I do
130% for that seat, right?
yeah, like I don't obviously we don't work on the logistics side of things, but where you can talk about like what is better for like the players and everything like that. And I really do hope that it's something that they've seen the feedback after this event and do try and reconsider because it's already a shame that more people can't get to play this game. 70 seats. That's 70 people that could have played. But then to also just have such a really strict, like no refunds at all. Because there was a situation where someone, and love goes out to them. They did have a family member pass, and then they couldn't get a refund. Like that's just
Right.
like, I don't know. Life happens. It's Pokemon. Like I don't think it needs to be a serious thing.
Yeah, I think especially with the brand that we are talking about too, right? With Pokemon, like that cutthroat mentality of it doesn't really fit the brand, right? Of all welcoming, everybody being happy, and
Yeah. Like I get
all
it's a policy, but I'm hoping that they can take the player feedback. I think they've been pretty good with player feedback lately. Maybe it was just a change to try and streamline operations, but hopefully it is something that can just kind of
right. It's
change.
gonna like it's gonna expedite the process. Excuse me. It's going to make the problem worse. Is what I'm trying to say with ICs and other big regionals that I don't know if I'm going to Brazil, but I better damn be sure at that millisecond it goes live. I click and enter,
Yeah.
and then I'll decide a month later if I'm going to go or not. Because if they're not going to reopen it up for people to back out, then I have to decide before I even decide that I want to go.
Yeah. I'm dealing with the same issue because like I'm literally 50-50 on whether I compete at LAIC. I want to. I don't know if I'll have the finances in place. That's a lot of travel, but it would be really fun. But I have to make that decision now.
Right.
And I have to take a spot and make the decision. But if I take the spot, that's someone else that can't compete. And LAIC registrations, they had wave one already, like instantly went. Everyone wants to go. And then I already feel bad enough when we're looking at a top 75 NA system competing at locals and taking away points from someone who's going to compete at Worlds. Because realistically, I'm not going to get a Worlds invite. I already feel bad enough about that. And I'm putting that aside, like, you know what? I deserve to also compete. But now I'd be taking away a registration spot for an event I might not go to. Like, I don't want to sign up. Like, and that sucks because I think too, like, it shouldn't be a bad thing for me to want to sign up. But now I feel like I'm punishing someone else by doing so. So it just kind of sucks.
Yeah, I wouldn't feel that way at locals. My mentality is like, if you want these 6 championship points, you're gonna have to earn it. You know
You
what I
had to
mean?
pry them from my cold dead hands.
Full dead hands. Yeah, that's how I feel.
I just feel bad. And then that one, I'm like, like I can't feel bad about that. Like, you want to compete at Worlds, you should be able to beat the Wash before she even got good caster at a local. Like, that's fine. But yeah, the LASC registration thing. Like, I think I still can make a decision now since Wave 2 has been delayed, but I don't think I'm gonna register because I don't want to. I don't
I
want to
was
screw
thinking about
someone
it.
else over out of a 50-50.
Yeah, I was thinking about it too, because I would actually I was looking at the flights and it's like not too bad. I have a like it's logistically I can make it work. It's just it's like you said, I have to decide now in what will be September 20th as this episode goes up, right? Like I don't it's in the middle of November and it's tough. Like if they gave me 3 more weeks, maybe give me to the middle of October or something and see if there's a slot or 2 left open. Maybe I can make that decision. But because you're forcing me to decide now and I don't have an answer because I haven't done all the calculations, then my only answer can be no. It's not right for me to take another slot from someone who has decided now that they do want to go.
Exactly. So that kind of, yeah. So all that being said, hopefully it is something that can get changed. The things like there being too many people that want to compete, there being not enough spots, like that's stuff that can't be controlled. But I think the reallotting spots is something. So I would like to see a change from that. But yeah. Before we get into our question of the week and start wrapping things up, something that I wanted to give you the platform for. You were talking about streaming earlier. You're diving into content creation overall. I know you already talked to the Discord about it, but talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I was confused when you were like, "Oh, you're talking to me?" But yeah, so basically, I was out in the ocean breeze. I was a number of pina coladas deep off of Sierra's suggestion because I didn't know what to order. I never know what to drink,
They're good.
and I got pina coladas. I was having fun, and I was just like, you know what? It's time I just go all in. Instead of like half foot here, half foot there. So I'm going all in on Pokemon content creation, at least from streaming wise. So my goal is to become a all around competitive Pokemon content creator. So that includes the trading card game and the video games and Pokemon Unite and maybe a little Go. We'll see what happens. Maybe they could fix maybe they'll fix once they fix the frame rates of like when I'm tapping and it actually works when I tap. Maybe I'll go into Go when they fix that if that happens. But the other three at least, like I want to be a resource for all things competitive Pokemon as a content creator. So I started streaming this week. I got a lot of love and appreciation and support on Twitter. So thank you to everybody who liked my tweets and retweeted, and we're excited about it. But basically, I'm going to stream the 3 different Pokemon games every week, and maybe sometimes other stuff on the weekends, a variety stream. But TCG Tuesdays, Wednesday VGC. I don't have a fancy name. I don't have a nice alliteration for VGC Wednesdays. And then Friday night Unite, which I'm excited for. Hopefully have some friends in the Pokemon Unite community that we can work together with. Maybe get some 5 stacks going with the stream and with the viewers and stuff and play Pokemon Unite. Because I don't know if you know, Sierra, Armarou's just got released. Cerulez just got released, right? Like they're pretty good Pokemon too. Some of my favorite Pokemon. So yeah, we're gonna give it a shot. We'll see what happens. I'm also trying to dabble in One Piece content creation and at least on the commentary end, uploading VODs of commentary from live events and stuff like that. So I just after those pina coladas, I decided I was like, it's time when I get back onto Jersey soil. We're going all in, and so far we're holding to it.
Nice. If you ever need to, I get too frustrated playing Pokemon Unite, so
too. I gotta watch my mouth on Friday. That's what I'm worried about.
I streamed a little Unite. I definitely I rage quit one too many streams. That's why I ultimately stopped playing. Ugarte enjoys Unite though, so if you need someone to queue with, I'm sure he would queue. I will not throw myself in the ring because, like I said, I'm trying to work on my overall stress levels, and Unite would not be good for me.
Yeah, and
as
you have
much
a
fun as that game is
to uphold. I get it.
Well, it's just a fun game, but I need to we're having a chill fall.
Well, that's why I want to have 5 stacks, right? Because then you can actually talk with your friends. Because Unite, as same with League of Legends or other MOBAs, the frustration comes because it's solo queue, because you can't talk and all your teammates are idiots and you have the worst negative perception of every person in the world because they're just strangers, right? But when it's your friend that flashes in and dies, and you're like, all right, I get it. He didn't, Ugarte didn't mean to do that. He's still trying to help us win. You're a little more positive because you can put a face to the enter. You know what I mean?
So I hear what you say, but as someone who has been called out one too many times in their Unite stacks and in other competitive games like Val, I don't know if I can fully agree. But
was it your bottom frag in Valorant or whatever?
We call it bottom frog. Because introducing Ugarte to Valorant, I said bottom frag at one point and he misheard me and thought I said bottom frog. So then at one point, someone was bottom of the leaderboard. He's like, oh, there's bottom frog. So now we just call bottom frog.
Damn, somebody's bottom frog every game. That's brutal.
Somebody's bottom frog. Still one of my favorite moments, but yeah, no, it's bottom frog. That's how you refer to it. But yeah. He'll unite with you.
Okay, that's good. I need friends, so.
Perfect.
Makes the pain hurt less if we're all going through it together.
There you go. Exactly. All right. Well, to wrap things up, I know it's been a little bit of a shorter episode, but I missed the question of the week this week, but you're here.
Yep. I
So what's
got
the
it.
question of the week? Drum roll.
All right. So our question of the week, and make sure if you are interested and want to ask us a question at the end of every podcast, you can join us in our Discord. The link is in the description down below. We have a channel for the question of the week. This one comes from Geb. And Geb asks, as we enter into 2025 season, in what ways are you looking to improve as players and as casters? Do you have any specific goals in mind, silly or otherwise?
Okay. Do you have an answer offhand or?
I guess like the player part is harder for me to answer than the caster part. So like, I don't know, you want to like do a half and half, or do I have to answer
Yeah.
both at once?
You can do half and half. Like we can do half. Go back and forth.
Okay, so I'll start with the caster part of it, and like I said, I want to become more well-rounded. I want to become like, I feel like there were some moments when I was at Worlds with at backstage at Worlds, and we're all sitting there, we're talking shop about the matches even when we're not casting it, and like there were moments when I see Lee and I see Scott, and times when I'm casting with Aaron or Len or other things, and like they see lines that I don't see, and right, sometimes I dabble in color commentary, so I want to be on that level. So that's what I want to improve on the most, is like it's not just like, why did I not see that same line of like the optimal decision, but like, so it's not just why didn't I see it, but like, how can I be at that same, how can I quickly assert the situation the same way that they are and come up to the same conclusion without them having to tell me, you know what I mean? So like, that's what I want to improve on, is like having and it's not the correct decision, right? It's not the correct opinion on what they should do, but like not being caught off guard like on some of the things that our great color casters say, that like I didn't even think about it for a second. Like I want to be able to be on that level and think on, not that I'm as great of a player as they are, because there's world's caliber, world's qualified players are way better than me at performance level, but like if I can get into that same head state as them.
I mean, you're talking about not knowing about a goal as a player, but wouldn't it then even be as a player to do that? Because I feel like that's also experience that they get from seeing it the lens of a player, right? That they kind of identify those lines.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess you would have to. I guess it's different when you're on commentary from like what you think the best. It's not just what you think the best play is. It's how can you properly communicate that play to the audience, where when you're a player, you can intrinsically decide that this is the valuable play without having to justify it or communicate it out loud. So I think they are connected skills, but I don't, I understand the connection there, but like maybe them as great players, it's not like one-to-one that like that's why they're communicating it well,
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So for a player aspect, I would just like to become more confident in my own play. I think like at a base level, I'm not bad at this game. Like I've never really gotten like to compete too much. And the regionals I do go to, I'm like, I don't have confidence in the team that I want to bring. So I'm just going to bring what someone else is doing. And like I doubt myself on a lot of things. And I think like confidence as a player, like when I got pulled on for Players Cup 3 and 4, like as a new player, I qualified for both of those events. I went through the qualification. I was cleared to compete. And then I got pulled for commentary. So like I started off like strong in playing, but then I've put all this pressure on myself. Wolf. I did beat Wolf
from the draft league, yeah.
Yeah, so I've put a lot of pressure on myself as a player since, because I haven't wanted to appear dumb, because I feel like I've always been trying to like prove that I'm not dumb at the game. But instead of trying to prove it, I should just not be dumb at the game. Like, you know what I mean? So instead of being worried about like, oh, I gotta fake it, like just actually being better at the game. So that's it for a player level. For like a commentary level for improving for the season, I feel like a lot of the times with the stories that we tell, or at least like I'll speak for like myself, that we'll talk about the Pokemon match and like we'll talk about the player's story inside and like outside. But when I work on like Valorant, or I work on other esports, like the story meetings that we have to hero build these players and how we talk about them in class and with the analyst desk and all of this stuff, is at a different level. And we're also like analyzing the player, their play tendencies, what they do. And I feel like I don't do that enough for like our players. We analyze the team, but not the player. And a lot of players have a
Right.
very different approach to the game. So the very simplest one to put on, like as a fact, is Riley values consistency to the point of refusing to run inaccurate moves. So that's a player play style tendency and everything that hits you in the face because it's very evident in his team building. But there's other players that when they're in between two plays, some go for the safe route, some go for something that's a little bit more aggressive and like that sort of stuff, which when you're talking about the lines, you talk about everything that's available, but you could also be more specific and tailoring it to that player's play style and telling the story from that lens. You know, if Wolf's always willing to make the call, okay, then why am I talking about the safe play? Why not in a tricky situation in the game call for Wolf's behind now? How is he going to get himself out of this? He's known to take risks. He's known to go for it. Is this something that Ugarte on the other end of the table is going to read into? Can he punish this? Like, I feel like that's so much more dynamic than just like, you could do this or this, right? Because you know the player. So I want to work on that. That's definitely like a pretty high up there goal because the play styles will vary a little bit with the specific teams and all of that stuff. But it is something I want to work on as well as just like changing up my own casting to kind of fit a little bit more of like an FPS league, like other esport kind of like storytelling. Cause like I really like that sort of stuff. So I wanna do that a little more.
Yeah, I think the playstyle note is like interesting and it's a good way, a good thing to build on because like that does happen a lot in other games. Or you think about League, or you think about fighting games, and you know if two players are playing Street Fighter and they're both Ryu, and like you're like, oh well, player X like he uses his fireballs literally all the time, and then player Y never uses his fireball as a Ryu. Like that's a playstyle thing that commentary is informing the story of the match because you can understand and recognize their play styles, and that's definitely an area we can improve on in Pokemon. And for me, like from a player perspective, I don't know. It's like it's so tough because I grew up in a different era in VGC. Like I always talk about the old Brooklyn days and the old 70 player PCs, and like we had locals that were tougher than regionals to win, and like it's not being hyperbolic to say like, and in that world, it was very frustrating when you weren't at the top tables because people like it truly did not give you the time of day. Like if you expressed an opinion, like very common, people wouldn't respond to your opinion. People would respond with what's your record, right? Like so it was almost like equating like your value and your opinion is as equal to what your value as a player is. And so I've always had that detriment in my head that like when I go out there and play in Charlotte and bomb, because like I wanted to have fun because I wanted to play with Metagross, and Metagross wasn't good, but I wanted to play a Metagross team, right? But then like Len and Aaron, every event they're not casting, they're playing and top cutting. It's like, well, I don't even know if I deserve to be in the same player field as them because when they're not casting, they're crushing it. And when I'm not casting, I'm just like, I'm at the low table. So I lose a lot of confidence with even attempting to go to locals. Like I would like to go to more cups and more challenges and stuff this year, but like I don't know. I like my own worst enemy. Like I try not to just because I don't want to feel like, oh well, if I go 0-3 at a local, then therefore my opinion on broadcast is less relevant.
No, it's hard, like the mental behind that, because I feel like I obviously can't relate to that era of Pokemon, and people have been a lot kinder with me in my journey to learning when I got involved because it was never a, "What's your record?" Like, I had from the people that know me and talked to me, I can't talk about the general player base or anything, but, like, those who conversed with me, there was, like, a decent amount of respect, so I never really had to worry about that, but it was still always a, like, "Wow, everyone else on the team is so smart, like, I'm new to this, like, I don't, like." I've always felt like I've had something to prove since then, and that's something that still then lurks to this day. I don't think I'm dumb at the game at any standard. There's some things that I'll say where I'm like, "Damn, Sierra, like, you're smart, like, you're so good at this," but then I still afterwards, I'm like, "Oh, okay, but, like, I did this wrong, or I did this wrong, or I coulda done this better," and, like, I'm still scared to go compete at a local, or someone that'll play against will realize that I didn't see a line and I didn't do this play
Yeah.
right, and like can call me out for maybe being dumber than they would think that I was based off a broadcast. And like there's a lot of mental to go through past that. And I don't think that's something that like a lot of people realize. Like we're not the only ones either. I'm not gonna name drop anyone else, but like that's a shared feeling amongst a few people, and it's hard, and especially too when like there is a lot of like criticism. I'm always open for constructive criticism, but
Yeah.
sometimes that isn't the case. So that'd be a good goal for this year for us, like kind of gaining that confidence and kind of having that, you know.
And I do want to say, like, we're in a much better world. Like, that's the dark ages. Like, our community and our people are much more forthcoming and like respectful to each other, regardless of record. And like our community now, like 6,000% better. I love the people in this group more than it used to be. I guess if there's something tangible I can improve on to answer Geb's question as a player, I've had this issue just always as when I play VGC is I lose a lot of game ones in best of threes. And so I'm good at making adjustments either to win the set game 2 and game 3, or at least force a game 3 after losing game 1. But I have to get better at winning those game 1s and not putting myself in those sweaty situations that any single mistake in game 2 or game 3 is going to cost me the set. Like, so being able to start off better in best of threes, because the amount, like when I went 2-5 in Charlotte, like the amount of those 5 losses that I lost game 1 and then tried as hard as I could to bring it back to game 3, where like if I just had a crit go this way or just a heat wave miss or something, like I win the set. Like I gotta find a way to not put myself in those situations and be so behind the 8 ball from the start.
For a tangible thing for me, I'm trash at team preview. That's a struggle as a player and a caster. I look at a team preview and it's like my brain turns off. Like, and like I've had like coaching through this and it's like, let's get into this. And like I can get babied through it, but when I'm looking at it, I'm like, there's too many options. Like, I don't know. It's like a rock, paper, scissors and everything.
I have 6 Pokemon, the variable.
There's too many choices. And I think too, like what I found interesting, like hopping into a casting career and a playing career at essentially the same time. There was only a few months different between that. Like people who didn't follow like VGC at first and is more so joining in. Like I was brought on with very little VG knowledge. So I've been kind of doing this both at the same time. Big issue I have as a player is making decisions. Because of casting, you call out 3 or 4 different lines and I'll be sitting there as a player. I cannot make a decision on the line. I will see the lines. You give me that situation to cast over and I'm like, you're asking this, or this, and it'll lead to this. And I'm sitting there in a game, and I'm like, I have 30 seconds. I got to make the decision, but my opponent can do X, 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 or X.
Yeah.
And I can't decide because I've never had to decide because when I've learned, I've just had to say it. I've never had to learn. So, like, it's like I know which one's correct, but I can't do that while playing. So that's another thing. I like how this podcast has just evolved. And, like, what can Joe Brown and Sierra Dawn do better about, like, about everything?
No, we're great. You know what? In retrospect, we got nothing to fix. We're good. We're fine. We're crushing it. All right.
I literally somebody linked me. They were listening to a cast from like I don't know if it was Worlds or something else, and they're like, "I'm listening to you cast," and you said "nonetheless" instead of "I think there's stuff to improve.
Okay, maybe you can improve on "nonetheless." Okay, I'll give you
nonetheless. Yeah.
Oh god.
Yeah, put me out of my misery. Yeah, good to wrap up.
But
podcast
you know what your
on
response is? I didn't hear when you were casting Worlds. That's how you respond. What did you say when you were casting Worlds? Oh, right, that's right.
Or we talk about the multiple YouTube VODs where they've called me out for Farrah Terry. That's a good one.
That's one of my favorites.
That is way too common.
Oh god, because it's clearly not on purpose. It's your brain is switching them, but it's just so funny.
The worst was I don't know how I tried to say Sarah Teller or something. I mixed up Terra and Stellar.
Yeah, Stellar is a tough word to throw in the middle of the sentence. Yeah.
All right.
I've struggled with
it. Instead of this going into everything dumb that Sierra said on the broadcast, we're gonna wrap this up. So, especially because it is late.
It is late.
But I know this episode wasn't as long as others, but we will make up to a great episode next week. So we do have Nicholas Morales that will be coming onto the podcast. For anyone who's like, why does that name sound familiar? Your Baltimore regional champion. So we will be asking him a bunch of questions. So make sure to be asking whether it is in the YouTube comments. You can also add us on Twitter, or if you're in the Discord, ask us there in the questions of the week channel. So we can ask all the questions. Make sure that we can ask questions on your behalf as well. Just asking generic questions of the week. Join the Discord, or just chatting with an awesome community. A lot of people have been talking with this new regulation, and there's some great stuff going on. If you made it to this point of the episode, thank you so much for tuning in. It has been awesome. We'll hopefully see you next week or on one of Joe Brown's Twitch streams. But regardless, have a great rest of your day, everyone. We'll see you then. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of OHKO.